talking with them, and they not only have the resources with policies and with frameworks, but they also provide different resources to help each of us think through our programs, think through what's next. And talking with them and looking at, well, what could we do in near-term kind of mitigation for our program if we're trying to build out something that's more resilient. The first recommendation was implementing phishing-resistant MFA. And talking with them about that, it's the text-based messages and the app-based one-time passwords. They're great. They're amazingly more secure than just passwords, but they're still susceptible and not impervious to compromise. And so what the recommendation is for your critical accounts, for systems that just really need to keep the lights on, moving to a form of MFA that goes back to the 3 pieces of identity. And so if you look at what identity actually is, it's something you know, typically a password, something you have, it's like a badge, maybe could be a certificate, could be a YubiKey, something like that, or something you are, a fingerprint, a hand scan, facial recognition. Anytime you've got multiple pieces of that, you are moving away from something that can easily be stolen. So if it's something that you physically have, somebody would physically have to have access to it. That would be why they're recommending these phishing-resistant MFAs. And so that's where getting Microsoft Hello or getting YubiKeys or certificate things, the government uses the ID cards that have to slide in the computers. This is where you are moving into something that people cannot break through. So that was their first recommendation. The second is conducting tabletop exercises. It's looking at the process, looking at your procedures, and then running through and testing them, trying it out, having different parts of the organization involved. Their recommendation is to test it with key people, and to also test it with those key people not being involved, as if somebody is out sick or traveling or just not otherwise not available. How do things work? Also highlighted in the advisory I was talking about earlier is how easy can you bring in forensics? How easy can third-party companies, your people that need to assist you, can they be brought in to do the work? Once you're able to test that and run through, maybe you need to do a data dump if you're not going to allow them access to your log sources. How long does that take to run? You need to build these into your timetables and have the SLAs set up so that you know if something happens, the business immediately knows, okay, it's going to be 28 hours before we can get data to a forensic company once we engage them. It helps set with the business the expectations of what is acceptable and what the business can survive, which is a different aspect of these tabletops that don't always get into with just worrying about turning the computers back on. The other is looking for vulnerabilities. CISA was highlighting the need for doing vulnerability scanning. I know here at Center, we have a robust patching program that we use, but we still use vulnerability scanning to find holes that aren't quite getting the attention that they should. And we use that to continually improve the base process. So looking at your patching program, are you thinking about your third-party software? Are you having enough data feeds to know when something needs to be applied? Playing through that, using vulnerability scanning to help inform that process improvement, so that you know that you're not just leaving yourself vulnerable to the next person who tries to knock on the door. The fourth thing that the CSA was recommending is to engage external advisors to enhance your program. There are tons of resources available to get information about how to improve your process. And it's better to test your capabilities so that you know what you have and where your shortfalls are, so that you also know how to appropriately engage outside advisors, whether that is going to conferences, attending web conferences like this, talking to CISA, which you can always talk to your regional advisor with them, or engaging companies like us to come in and share with you with what we're seeing. Getting outside opinion helps turn over the rocks that may have been kind of covered up with just keeping the business running down to down. So beyond doing these near-term kind of fixes, I was talking with Ernesto on this. I was reading through some advisories, and it's like, okay, what can we really do from a long term to fix the actual problems, to move the needle, to get our things going that aren't easy. And the number one item that was recommended was for business to invest in a secure by design or security by default development practice. So if you've talked with me individually, I've always brought up security by design. It's a different way of looking at SDLC. What it is it's a theory about every step in the process for any time you have a project or an initiative that touches data to involve some sort of input from the security department. And that is, you're going to improve a website, you're going to bring in a new ERP, you're going to engage with a new vendor, you're going to implement a new version of a software. What data does that touch? How do we think about it and advise the project team to build out the solution, build out the support processes in a way that incorporates security throughout the whole process, instead of bringing something to development, bringing it to production, doing your vulnerability scans and your pen tests on it, and then realize you've got to do a follow-on project afterwards to fix those holes. So that was the first recommendation from CISA, was building that secure by design philosophy into your project. The other thing that they brought up, that the next thing you can do is, I know it's a little bit of a dry subject, but looking at security frameworks that are being developed and build controls based on the frameworks so that you can establish governance on these newer policies and kind of have the technology fully developed before it's really adopted by your business. One example I can give is the NIST AI risk management framework that came out recently. It highlights how you measure risk and how you look at AI in the environment. And I had talked earlier with my discussion with Baba on setting up the governance, on looking through how do we empower the company to have champions throughout the environment rather than just pushing it from one central place on high. And very much so using these frameworks as a way to think through, what are the powers that be thinking about, who are the leaders in industry saying that we should do, and then what does that mean for us? How do we make it relevant for our company? And use that as a way to guide and set up your roadmap so that you're building the right guardrails for your organization. At the end of the day, you will still need to do the hard work for these policies and the governance you set up. There are a lot of tools that are available that are federally funded and no cost. Went on the CISA website on that. So they've got different resources you can have available. They've got cyber hygiene scanning, which is what they call their external vulnerability scans, the web application testing. There's ransomware readiness assessments that they have available where you can download a template and walk through. There's cyber resilience reviews where it's these templates that help you talk through and think through how resilient you are to these events happening, which get more into the business continuity planning. And there's also where you can talk to a cybersecurity advisor with the CSA. And so there's regional cybersecurity advisors. The majority of the people on this call are going to be in Region 6, where you can sit down and talk with them. They also have hosted CISA workshops and exercises and training programs. And if you happen to be an SLTT, a state and local, tribal, or territorial government, they have no cost consulting and tooling that's additional, and grants as well for those government entities. And so it isn't just a CISA. NIST has a lot of information available. CIS, which is the Center for Internet Security, has a lot of guidelines and standards that you can apply to your systems. InfraGard, if you're in one of the industries that's tied with critical infrastructure, a great way to be connected with the FBI, see the notices that they publish, get advisories on how to deal with things, get lists of indicators of compromise that you can plug into your tooling. There's a whole other list, set of resources available to find your templates and guides.